Okay, so normally I try to theme these as best I could, but it occurs to me that just before filming this video, I don't have a Batman shirt. Like, of all the t-shirts I own, I don't have a Batman shirt. So we're going with the Crow. I have the Crow instead. Dark and brooding, I guess. The original Brandon Lee version, not that remake crap. It's the best one. So Batman Caped Crusader is a new Batman animated series on Amazon Prime, brought to us by Bruce Timm, who brought us the original Batman animated series, as well as the entire DCAU that spanned from the 90s to the 2000s. So Superman the animated series, Justice League Unlimited, which I consider to be one show. I don't know why people keep them separated. Static Shock, Batman Beyond, and the Zeta Project. When people bring up the DCAU, they always leave out the Zeta Project. They shouldn't. It's a good show. And surprisingly, the show is produced by J.J. Abrams, who hopefully will keep his weird mystery box stuff away from it. You know, since Batman the Animated Series, we've all been waiting for some kind of successor to that. And it's been difficult because that show was so good that it kind of set the bar for superhero shows. That and X-Men, the animated series as well. And it's unfortunate because a lot of people will just compare every single Batman show to that show. Every single one tries to make them live up to that standard. So we've had The Batman, which kind of sort of was like that. Batman Brave and the Bold, which was a lighter one, but also had its moments of, dark, brooding, complex character development. Then we had Beware the Batman, which everyone has forgotten about. And now we have this show, which I think comes pretty close, but not really quite there. Although it does do some things that the original animated series couldn't. For one, this is on Amazon Prime, and as I said in my Has Been Hotel review, that Amazon Prime seems to be the place for violent, mature, adult animated shows. And while it's not as extreme as, say, Invincible, it does seem pretty restrained, so there's not a whole lot of over-the-top violence, mature themes. I mean, there'll be like a drop of blood here and there. Someone will get shot. Batman will find a corpse. Little things. While the original animated series did have that aesthetic of like the 1940s, it was apparent that it was a more modern time with just sort of the style of that, because he had a lot of advanced technology, especially when they got into the Justice League stuff. But this show seems to be grounded directly in roughly the 1940s. It's also very low tech. There's no Bat computer. Batman has like a physical map that he has to look at, and there's typewriters and, people using phone booths and things like that. And I mean that both in concept and in the show too, because while this does seem to be based on some of the earlier iterations of Batman, in the show, it seems to be during the earlier years of Batman, when he's considered like a mysterious rumor that goes around and the cops are looking for him and villains are afraid of him. And a lot of the villains in the show also seem to be based on a lot of earlier versions of themselves. And as far as the villains go, there are some familiar faces we've seen, and a few that I really feel like were not really utilized that well in previous versions, or were just very unfamiliar. And I think that's a good idea when you're doing a Batman show. That's one thing Beware the Batman did very well. They took a lot of the lesser known villains and gave them the spotlight. And while, like I said, we do have some familiar faces in this show, we do see a bunch of characters that typically don't really get seen very often or at all in any of the animated shows, and even some that I was not really that familiar with. I really like Clayface in this one. The episode with Clayface is probably one of the better episodes of the season, and I do have to give the show a lot of credit for making Harley Quinn legitimately terrifying, which usually she isn't. Like, she's usually more fun than this, but in this one, she is just stone cold messed up. Now, Batman is typically a very grounded hero. I mean, he's a street level hero, so obviously he deals with, petty thugs and, crime lords and things like that, and all the wacky supervillains that he has. But this one, I was a little bit concerned because at one point, Gentleman Ghost shows up, and I was wondering exactly how grounded they were going to keep this show. And when he showed up, I thought maybe they were going to do like a like a Scooby-Doo thing with him, like find out that he's a guy in a suit trying to rob people. But no, he was a ghost, and they actually had to do this whole ritual to get rid of him. And I'm very glad that they did that, keeping the supernatural elements so that future episodes can delve a little bit deeper into the DC universe, or at least the DC universe that is part of this universe. So we could probably get crossovers with other legitimate superheroes. And I've been hearing rumors that there's a very good chance that they might actually cross over with the Fleischer Studios Superman, who does fall into the public domain, so they would have free range to use them, although I'm pretty sure they could have used them anyway. The reason why people are thinking that is because there's a scene in one episode where you see a bunch of reporters, and one reporter looks very similar to Lois Lane's design from the Fleischer Superman. So a lot of people think that we might see him sometime in the future, and I think that would be a very interesting crossover, because we don't usually see a whole lot with the Fleischer Superman. Speaking of the reporters, there was another reference I picked up on very quickly. There is a reporter named Eel O'Brien who's Plastic Man, but he's just a reporter in this one. But I have a feeling that if we see more of him in future installments, we might get to see him fall into a vat of chemicals. There are also some callbacks to Diedrich Bader, who voiced Batman in Batman Brave and the Bold, is actually the voice of Harvey Dent in this show, and he, of course, becomes Two-Face. And this is another time where people are going to make comparisons, because Two-Face in Batman the Animated Series was easily one of the most tragic characters in the whole show. And while a lot of that tragedy crosses over into this show, I feel like it's not quite the same. This version of Two-Face, unless I'm missing something from the comics, which of course I'm not overly familiar with, unless I'm missing something here, it does seem to be a little bit based on Two-Face or Harvey Dent from the movie The Dark Knight. And in fact, visually, he kind of looks the same as well. So I'm wondering if they got a little bit of inspiration from that. I did notice that the show seems to focus a lot on the side characters. So we get a lot of Commissioner Gordon and Barbara Gordon and Montoya as well. And we get to see them do a lot of the heavy lifting, dealing with the criminals and uncovering corruption within the Gotham City Police Department. And I thought a lot of that was very interesting too. Although I've heard a lot of people criticize how the show didn't really focus on Batman that much. I think it did enough, but it's nice to see the supporting cast get the spotlight also. Speaking of Batman, we should probably talk about him in his own show, right? So this time around, Batman is voiced by Hamish Linklater, who I'm not really familiar with his previous works. He definitely has the voice for Batman, but I felt the performance was a little bit awkward and stiff. Maybe he needs a little bit of time to settle into the character, although that might also be the point, because they explore aspects of this character that we don't really see that often. Bruce Wayne in this one is not nearly as charismatic and charming as he was in the animated series. This time around, he's kind of socially awkward and a little bit weird. And this version of Batman is also very reckless. Like, there's a part in the show where he actually gets a concussion, and it starts to affect him while he's trying to fight criminals. So I think that enters into this being a very early version of Batman, the early years of him, because he is definitely not the same type of Batman we're used to. He was rude to Alfred a couple of times, and that was genuinely upsetting. I'm also glad they didn't spend too much time on the origin story, because I feel like Batman is such a prominent character now, like everybody knows the origin story. I'm convinced there are people now who are born knowing who Batman is, but they did touch on it on one episode, and I really like that they focused on an aspect of the origin story that we don't usually get to see often: the immediate aftermath. Yeah, we got to see how this affected young Bruce Wayne immediately after, and it actually goes into his adulthood too, because they seem to focus a lot on the trauma that came with his origin story. And again, it's something that we don't see very often. So yeah, naturally this version of Batman is going to be a little bit messed up in the head because of everything that happened. But they do manage to show his compassion too. What was that quote where Someone said something like, if you can't see Batman comforting a scared child, that's not Batman, that's the Punisher in a weird hat or something like that. I don't remember who said the quote, I got it completely wrong, but they did actually show that in one episode, because there was an episode, again, I don't want to spoil too much about this, but there was an episode where one of the characters that he was chasing was a little girl who needed help, and even though she was a villain, Batman helped him. So there's definitely that little iota of humanity still in this character that is very, very essential for a Batman story. So as of this video, I've only seen the first season, and I know there's going to be more episodes coming, but overall, I liked it. It didn't quite live up to the animated series yet. Who knows how far it'll go after this. But I think we can all sort of take solace in the fact that we've never really had a bad Batman show, have we? No, every single one, while having a lot of similarities, usually brings something new to the table, and this show is no exception. I'm definitely interested in checking out more of it. While it had a few awkward moments, I think the show has a lot of room to grow, and it's pretty obvious that they set up for a lot of other stuff for down the road, so who knows how far this one's gonna go. But I definitely recommend it. If you can leave behind Batman the Animated Series, I know that's very difficult to do. I think giving this one a chance is definitely worth it. But that's all I got for Batman Caped Crusader. Leave a comment below and let me know what you thought of it. My name is Rob, and have a wonderful day.